2v8 has made its third appearance in Dead by Daylight, and this time it's themed to Resident Evil. And that means that we have 3 new killers, 2 of which are obviously the 2 Resident Evil chapters released in Dead by Daylight, Nemesis and Wesker. On top of this, we've also added Legion, since he has the legendary Hunk skin, and William Birkin will be playable in this mode as well. So, what does this mean? Obviously there's a lot to unpack here. The second time that 2v8 came around, they changed up the classes a little bit for both sides, added a few killers, but other than that, nothing really drastic changed. This time around, there's a few things that you should know, either before you play 2v8, or if you've already played it, maybe you don't know already, that will help your game a lot. First of all, Nemesis and Wesker have their own buffs and base kit things added into their kit, just like any other killer has in this mode, to try and give them a 1-up since there are no perks and add-ons to help make their power feel more well-rounded and adjusted to the mode. For Nemesis, the devs drastically buffed his hindered status effect that he gives survivors upon the initial contamination. So if you're already infected and you get hit by Nemesis, you're just going to lose a health state. That's not going to change. But upon the initial contamination, they've essentially re-added in the old new Liquor Tongue, where they buffed Liquor Tongue for like a week, and it was a full 3 seconds on top of the regular 1 second of hindered, and then they immediately nerfed it again. They basically brought that back, so the original buffed Liquor Tongue is back in the game now for 2v8, and it does slow down survivors a lot. Nemesis actually felt very sticky and not nice to play the first day or two it was out. They've since done an update, and he feels smooth again, so luckily they've patched that out. Moving on to Wesker, the most notable buff in his kit is that instead of having 2 dashes, he now has 3. And this is going to be a pretty big deal, I'd imagine. If you don't know already, once 2v8 was released the first time around, they gave Nurse a 3rd blink. And it's honestly not super crazy because these maps are larger in order to accommodate for having 10 players in one map as opposed to 5. So keep that in mind. It is still pretty crazy. You can pull off some extra tricks now having that extra dash with Wesker. You can also, if you're close enough, hit a survivor with 1 dash and then immediately chase after him again with the other 2. It does open up the door for a lot of creativity and a lot of devastation from Wesker, but just keep in mind that the maps are a lot bigger, and that's part of the reason why I think that they added that in there. In addition to that, since both Wesker and Nemesis infect and or contaminate survivors, there are supply crates throughout each map and every trial. However, the most notable thing to remember is that 1 spray can will cure both infections. So if you're contaminated with Nemesis's T-virus and you're contaminated with Wesker's Ouroboros virus, at the same time, you can get sprayed either by doing it yourself or from your teammate with 1 spray can, and it'll remove both infections. So that's very notable there. The only really notable thing about Legion's power are that he now has a max of 9 Feral Frenzy slashes as opposed to 5. As you know, Legion was reworked not all that long ago in the 4v1, where he can now stab 4 survivors as long as they're not in the mending state, and then upon the 5th feral slash, that survivor will become downed. It's the same thing applied, but they basically just doubled the range so that Legion can actually go around the map and get everybody. Instead of downing people on 5 hits, they've basically just made it the same thing for 2v8, but just made it more practical for 2v8. Also, something to note, if you're expecting to have Nemesis's and Wesker's terror radius intertwined, unfortunately it's not going to happen. The same has been the case for all other killers released in 2v8. You're going to have a generic terror radius and generic chase music. Whether you're playing killer or you're playing the survivor, that's going to be the case either way. And there are some advantages for the killers, I would say, because the game can't quite process the distance of each killer's individual terror radius when they're both within 1 survivor's space. So you'll kind of hear the one that's closest to you, and then sometimes the other person can sneak up on you, so that's just something to note there. Aside from getting 3 new killers and having the supply crates cure both infections, I would say the biggest addition to this mode of 2v8, besides of course the Resident Evil theming, is that there are now herbs around the map. Very similar to totems. I'm not sure exactly what the science is between the spawn. I'm sure it's kind of somewhat random and not necessarily equal to a totem spawn because, of course, these maps have been altered a bit. However, there are 2 different kinds of herbs that survivors and killers can collect. They are yellow and green. For survivors, the herbs are very beneficial and can save your life. The green herbs will heal a health state for any survivor that picks it. It takes about 10 seconds to pick the leaves off of the herb, and then you will become healthy from a green herb. A yellow herb, however, will completely remove 1 cage state, if you will. So this is essentially Tori Kane's Shoulder the Burden, the brand new perk that just came out in the last chapter. So essentially this is a base kit Shoulder the Burden for all survivors. But here's the catch. There are a limited amount. Not every survivor is guaranteed to get one, and the biggest downside for survivors is that the killers can collect them too, and if the killer collects them, it destroys them permanently and they cannot be used. On top of that, any killer that stomps out an herb will give themselves and their teammate a 10% haste speed boost for 20 seconds. So it's pretty serious. Obviously, it's not ideal for killers to seek these out as opposed to downing and chasing and killing survivors, but if you come across one, especially a yellow herb, it's definitely worth your while to stomp it out and eliminate a resource from survivors. Lastly, my favorite change that they've made to 2v8 was put in place to help with the queue times. Now, both rounds of 2v8, the queue times for killer has been very, very long, outrageous time. Some killer mains have quoted waiting 30 minutes for a match. I know the second time around, I myself was waiting at least 15-20 minutes. And no matter how large the blood point incentive is to play survivor, at the end of the day, it just seems that playing killer in 2v8 mode is ultimately the more fun side to play. So especially now that we have licensed killers, which I'll eat my words because I thought that it would never happen, I can totally understand why everybody's going to want to play Wesker and Nemesis and even Legion with Hunk. So I can totally see queue times for specific killers being longer than others. However, this is what they've changed. Every single lobby will have up to, but no more than 2 bots added to the survivor team to help the queue time. Because survivor players are in desperate need. We need 8 in every lobby, and we're getting about 4. So this will help with killer queue times a lot, because there's going to be about 20% more lobbies available, since every lobby will have 2 bots added in. So instead of needing 8 survivors, you only need 6 survivors for a match, and then you'll have 2 bots. I think we're going to have to see how this goes, because obviously it can deteriorate your gameplay a little bit and everyone's enjoyment of the match, having bots. Just from playing a few games of solo queue in there myself, I've had bots just stand right next to me and just not heal me. I've had bots just walk in circles around the gen and not help. So bots can certainly be frustrating. They also can be more difficult for killers to go against because you cannot mind game them. They know your location at all times. So when in chase with a bot, sometimes you might be trying to do mind games and not even realize it's a bot player until you look at the HUD and then realize you've been wasting your time and you have to just bloodlust him and get him down. So we'll have to see how it goes. I do think it's a good idea, though, to help with the queue times because there's not much else you can do. I don't see the devs offering shards or auric cells for people to play the game. Like, I just think that's a little bit out of proportion, and I don't think that'll ever happen. And I don't think you could make the blood point incentive any higher to the point where it's sincerely going to convince people to play survivor instead of killer. So I think this is a pretty good idea. We'll have to see if it works out. You guys let me know what you think. Of course, there were a couple more maps. I don't believe we had Ormond the last time around. I think that is new to this time, and we also have RPD added, which is very nice. And one little note about RPD, of course, it is about the regular size of what it was when RPD was first released with the Nemesis chapter way back when. So the only exception is that the upstairs area in the library is still blocked off because they still figured that was kind of broken. But as far as I know, I believe it's the same map every time. It still says like west or east wing, like augmented or whatever. But pretty much from what I've seen, every part of the map is open to accommodate for the need for larger space for all of the extra players. That's all I have for 2v8 mode this time around. I will be doing another diagnostic of the killer pick rates after this is all over, so look out for that in a few weeks. And in the meantime, make sure you get out there and play Resident Evil 2v8 in Dead by Daylight, because we only have this for a limited time. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what you guys think, and have a good day. Peace.